think he certainly deserves to be in an IndyCar, and if we could make that happen, I'd like to, but it's a big if right now.
There's a couple roads that have very nasty corners. We have to watch out for those, so it's a real variety.
Motoring 91 is brought to you by Quaker State. The big Q stands for quality. Always has, always will.
Welcome to the 1991s. Hello, everybody. And what you're looking at is the car that is causing a lot of excitement for 1991. It's the Acura NSX. And we're going to try and find out what all the excitement is about. And later on, our man behind the wheel, Graham Fletcher, is going to put this car through its paces on test drive. That and much more. But first, we're going to join Steve Grant, who has a story about one of the fastest rising stars in the car racing world. And he just happens to be Canadian.
These were the glory days for True Sports and their Bud car. Back-to-back championship seasons, Indy 500 victories, and big purses. Well, since then, Bobby Rahal has changed team colors, and successor Scott Pruitt is still on the mend from a very serious accident. Well, Pruitt will be back, but what better time to look for new talent? And right now, Paul Tracy fits the bill perfectly. His complete domination of the ARS circuit led True Sports chief Steve Horn into giving him his first ever test in an IndyCar.
Well, I think we're just giving him an opportunity to see how good he was. I think he deserves that opportunity. It's good information for us. I think he certainly deserves to be in an IndyCar, and if we could make that happen, I'd like to, but it's a big if right now.
It's everybody kind of told me that these cars are so easy to drive, and most of the guys that I talked to were middle to back of the field guys, and they said all the cars are easy, they're real easy to drive, but they're not really. To get down the last couple seconds would be a real hard job. But I'm still learning. It's my first time in the car, and I think I'm doing a pretty good job.
Seat feel any better for you, or that windshield any better?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
You guys will probably get sick of changing it.
No. Whatever makes you comfortable.
He's still got a lot to learn, obviously, but he can describe what's going on in pretty good terms and be very subjective about it. If the car's capable of 100%, but the driver can only get 80% out of it because he can't explain what it takes to get the last 20, then he's only ever going to get 80% out of it. But so feedback is very important. I think Paul gives excellent feedback.
He may have dominated on the ARS circuit, but even Paul Tracy would be the first to admit that driving one of these Indy cars is a whole different ballgame, and whether he lands a ride next year or not, he still has plenty to learn.
Well, it's just learning how the car works, different changes to the car. It's a totally different car than the ARS cars. It's a longer wheelbase, it's got bigger tires, more downforce. It's just totally different. I'm just out here to learn and have a good time. Steven told me to take it one step at a time, and he didn't want to see me going out there and try to put in a flying lap, because that was not the purpose of the test. It was to see to learn about the car, figure what these things are about, so I have a little bit of knowledge when I try to go into a race, hopefully this year, rather than going out and putting in a flying lap and just hanging the thing out. I'd rather get the car set up and get it working for me.
Lap times were not released, but if you go by my stopwatch, if a race were held tomorrow at Mid-Ohio, Paul Tracy would qualify in the middle of the pack. But a lack of sponsorship might prove to be a problem. Steve Horn is not giving up on Scott Pruitt, and adding a second car cost big money.
It's always been our goal to run two cars. I think you look at other teams now, Penske and Gallus and some of the others, you've got to run a two-car team to be competitive. So, two cars are definitely in our future.
But will that future include Paul Tracy?
Well, I think he's a young man. He's 21 years old. He's got an experience level that I don't think any other 21-year-old driver has got. He's fast. He's a proven quantity. He knows how to win. But he's now at the bottom rung of the IndyCar ladder. And but 3 or 4 years down the road, you look at guys like Michael Andretti and Al Unser Jr. and I see the same sort of talent with Paul.
It's just better all around.
You don't so much get in and out of the NSX, rather you clamber in and out. Once seated behind the wheel, however, you will find a high degree of luxury and a cockpit that is laid out in logical fashion.
Whoa, I'll tell you, if speed is your thing, then this NSX just might be for you. All right, it's now time to leave the highway and head to the shop and join our resident mechanic, Bill Gardner.
Well, Brad, just about every car rolling off assembly lines today has fuel injection, just like that NSX you're trying to impress everybody with. This 85 Pontiac 6000 had fuel injection, and it's logged quite a few miles now, and it's got all the classic symptoms of a car with dirty or clogged fuel injectors. It's got a rough idle. It's lacking on throttle response, the pickup isn't very good, and the fuel mileage isn't what it used to be. The owner's down on power, and he's just not happy with the way the car's running. So we're going to clean out the fuel injection system and restore all that zip and pep that he used to have in this car. Now, the kit required to perform this injector cleaning isn't something you can buy yourself or do at home. It's something you'll have to take into a car repairman to have done. It just consists of various different hardware to make all the connections to attach this cleaner to the car. In the case of this car, it's a fairly simple connection. The reason we need to do this fuel injector cleaning, by the way, is the fact that the injectors themselves are located in a really hot spot in the engine. In the case of this V6, they're buried right down underneath the intake manifold, deep into the cylinder head. So what we've done here is connected to the Schrader valve. That's a valve similar to an air conditioning system or a tire valve. Just threads right on, and we're going to feed the car a concentrated mixture of fuel and cleaner through this hose. We've pinched off the supply and return lines over here with a couple of clamps, and that's isolated the fuel system so that all the fuel is going to come out of the can along with the cleaner, and we're going to run the engine 10 to 12 minutes until it exhausts that can of cleaner. There you can see the regulator gauge coming up to 29 pounds. And we're going to check it for leaks at any of these connections. Make sure there's no leaks of cleaner. Now it's going to take this 6000 about 10 to 15 minutes to completely exhaust that can of cleaning solution. When it does, it'll just stall out on its own, and we'll disconnect all our fittings and plug back in the fuel pump back at the tank. It'll be ready to go. Now, we will have done two things here. We will have cleaned the fuel injectors, and we'll have a better spray pattern off those injectors. We'll have a finer, more atomized spray coming out of the injectors. And that'll help our fuel mileage and the performance of the engine, and it will reduce the exhaust emissions somewhat as well. The other thing it's going to do is clean out the combustion chamber somewhat. We've got another cylinder head off a different engine here, and you can see some of the deposits that build up on the valves of the engine, and this cleaner will help to rid some of those deposits. This is an intake valve from this cylinder head, and you can see that I've buffed off this side here. I've cleaned off the carbon deposits. This is what it should look like when it's new or in really good shape. On the other side of the same intake valve, you can see all this carbon encrusted area, and that restricts the flow of fuel into the engine and hampers our engine performance severely. Until next week, I'm Bill Gardner for Motoring 91.
Test Drive with Graham Fletcher.
I'm sure you've seen, read or heard just how well Honda are doing on the Formula One circuit. Well, this car we're looking at this week, the 1991 Acura NSX, owes much of its refinement and engineering to the accomplishments Honda achieved on the track.
Just wanted to have a look at it. No problem.
In shooting this car, it earned an incredible amount of interest.
Have a nice day, guys.
The NSX is built almost exclusively from aluminum. The hood, the fenders, the doors, most of the suspension, and yes, even the jack is made of aluminum. The result is a car that weighs a little over half that of the same car made of steel. This, coupled with an extraordinarily powerful engine, give the NSX a superb power-to-weight ratio. The drawback is that aluminum is fragile when compared to steel and is far more difficult to work with, so make sure you keep your car away from the klutz who like to swing their doors out into yours. During the time I was testing the car, there was only one negative comment, and that was that the chrome tailpipe tips looked too cheap and too much like a Fiero. As with the MR2 and the ZR1, storage space is at a premium. The trunk will hold 2 small overnight bags, and you might just get your toothbrush in under the hood. Most of the space up front is occupied by a spare tyre. Should you have to use it, you must inflate it using the mini compressor found in the trunk. The battery is buried beneath the spare. Now this design makes boosting the car next to impossible. Some auxiliary booster posts would have been a real nice idea. You don't so much get in and out of the NSX, rather you clamber in and out. Once seated behind the wheel, however, you will find a high degree of luxury and a cockpit that is laid out in logical fashion. The seats are comfortable and provide the required lateral support thanks to some huge side bolsters. They manage to restrict upper body movement without being an undue hindrance. The dash features a complete set of analog instrumentations. This setup allows all information to be picked up at a glance, leaving the driver more time to concentrate on the road ahead. The driver is treated to a panoramic forward view thanks to the low hood line and large expansive glass. There is, however, a sizable blind spot at your left shoulder, and backing the car up takes some getting used to. At the heart of the NSX is a sweet 3-litre 24-valve double overhead cam engine that features some pretty tricky engineering. At peak RPM, the engine generates 270 stampeding horses and 210 pounds-feet of torque. The word VTEC you see embossed on the intake plenum is short for Honda's variable valve timing and lifter electronic control system. It is this system that gives the engine its punch. Through some innovative engineering, the valves are opened by one of 2 different cam lobes. Engine speed dictates which lobe is used. Without getting too technical, it has the desired effect. On the skid pad, it translates to 0 to 100 km/h times in just under 6 seconds. On the road, pop the clutch and pull the red line, and you blast off into oblivion watching the world pass by at highly illegal speeds. A world where lampposts begin to look like picket fences. The NSX gives new meaning to the term riding on rails. During the pylon test, the car zipped through the course in nothing short of breathtaking style. There is no body lean, and the mid-engine configuration gives a very favourable weight distribution. This limits understeer and makes the car very forgiving. The sophisticated multi-link suspension offers a surprisingly compliant ride given its firm nature and outstanding handling characteristics. The ZR-rated Yokohama tyres offer superb grip in the dry, but get a little skittish in the wet. The 4-wheel ventilated disc brake setup features a 4-channel anti-lock brake system. Throw the anchor out and the car slows to rest in a scant 96 feet from 80 kilometers an hour. These figures are the best of the 52 or so vehicles we've reviewed in the past. The beauty of this system is that it works hand in hand with a superb traction control system that keeps the car honest. Well, believe it or not, I do have a pet peeve. Firstly, I've got to give the car back. But seriously, when you have a car that looks like $1 million, as this one does, and you put these dreadful pop-up headlights on the front, they just destroy the entire effect. Now to the scoreboard for the ratings of the 1991 NSX. The NSX is a quick car. The clock time is almost academic because unlike so many other exotics, anyone can drive the car and derive the most from it. For the record, we took just under 6 seconds to reach the 100k mark. Small wonder Honda has cleaned up on the Formula One circuit. This car is a dream to drive. It's obedient, forgiving, and yet exciting. Seldom do you find such an untemperamental combination. We recorded the shortest stopping distances yet with the NSX's anti-lock brakes. Unlike some ABS systems, the driver can actually achieve optimum stops without the system intervening, and so I award my first perfect 10. Unfortunately, we did not have the car for long enough to establish an accurate fuel economy figure, and so a guesstimate of around 20 miles per gallon is what you can expect. We recorded a fairly noisy 75 decibels during the test. The noise can be attributed to the close proximity of the engine and some very noisy tyres, neither of which should really be of any serious concern. Safety abounds in this car. You'll find anti-lock brakes, traction control and padded knee bolsters. Combine this with looks, panache and a heck of a good engine and you have perhaps the ultimate car for the dollar. A Ferrari it ain't, but it certainly gets darn close.
Just when you thought you've seen everything, comes the lane changer. This plastic gizmo is designed to be used in conjunction with your existing rearview mirror. The result? No more blind spots. The lane changer claims to improve your view when changing lanes and allows you to keep a closer eye on backseat activities. It's easy to install, but the manufacturers warn it may take a few days to get used to the increased visibility. And remember, objects in the mirror are closer than they appear. If you have any comments or suggestions, drop us a line at Motoring 91, Post Office Box 284, Station J, Toronto, Ontario, M4J 4Y1.
You know, there's nothing like a road coffee, but I'll tell you something. When you're driving the NSX, you do not drink your coffee in the car for a couple of reasons. One, you want to have both hands on the wheel, and two, could you imagine spilling a coffee in this car? I think not. And you know, you want to drive a car like this almost anywhere. Anywhere, though, except where Nancy Zionos found herself this past week.
These drivers are here for the Georgian Trials Rally near Britt, Ontario. This is the third of 5 stages that make up the Ontario Performance Championships.
I'm Dennis Wharton, the coordinator of the 1990 Georgian Trials Rally. I'd like to welcome you all to the event and hope you have a good time out there today. You see a lot of people out here with hats that look like this. This is a sign of respect from you. Anybody you see out there wearing one of these, give them your utmost respect because they're out there working for you. They're coming out here at their own expense, and a lot of times it's a fair amount of money so that you can go out there and have some fun playing around with your cars.
Rallying has been a popular sport and pastime in Europe for many years. The title itself usually conjures up images of navigational time competition, but there is another type called performance.
In each of the checkpoints along the route, each competitor will get a sticker. That sticker will identify when they got there. This rally broken into what we call transits, which are low-speed drives up the highway, and the high-speed competitive stages. At the start of each of the stages, they get a sticker saying what time they leave that stage, and they just go through this road as fast as they can. And when they get to the other end, we'll give them another sticker that tells them what time they got to the other end. And we just take the difference between the two and find out how long it took each car to do it. Add them all up over the 8 stages the rally contains, and the one with the lowest number is going to be the winner.
The Georgian Trials is known for a good variety of roads, some very, very fast sections, high fourth gear, up to 140, 150 kilometers an hour. Other sections are very tight and treacherous. The roads are known for their character. Some of them are very smooth and rhythmic that you can get used to, and it doesn't really surprise you very much. There's a couple roads that have very nasty corners, such as hard turns over a crest that you couldn't see easily, and we have to watch out for those, so it's a real variety.
We don't have enough time to do the complete changeover right now. We do as much work as we can so that when the time comes we can just do all the work we have to as fast as we can at the next service. Hopefully we'll make it back.
I said, just note that on the odd occasion, drivers also service their own vehicles instead of just relying on the service guys.
Why is that?
Why is that? Because I guess I've got nothing else to do, and my man here needs a little bit of a helping hand.
some of the entries here today are a little different, and I don't mean in terms of machine. Car number 31's driver and navigator are both female.
It was on a bet a couple years ago, and it started with autocrossing, which is terrorizing defenseless pylons in a parking lot. So I went out and I drove around, and I was slow the first time, but I won the ladies class the second time around. So that's when I got hooked. And at that event, I met Karen, my co-driver, and so she said, well, why don't you go on a rally with me? So I said, what's that? She said, don't worry, you'll like it. You drive, I'll co-drive.
It's like basically I got her into doing TSD rallies. That we did that together, and then she's the one who wanted to go do this. It's her fault.
Although the ladies managed to have some fun along the way, they certainly take their racing seriously.
There's quite a few women in rallying, mostly in the right seat, the co-driver's seat, because I think that's a very, very high pressure. I know that's a very high pressure job. It's really fast-paced and hectic in a rally car. It takes someone who can really handle pressure, and I think a lot of women are really good at that.
Hey, but we're having fun.
Tragedy struck a day after the Georgian trials. Andy Browning, winner of 4 national and provincial titles, was killed in a head-on crash on his way home. Andy Browning was just 23 years old. Kenzie's Corner with Jim Kenzie.
I don't know what the price of gasoline is in your part of the country, but here in Toronto it's pushing 60 cents a litre, and it's getting worse. And if those goofs in the Middle East don't stop threatening to lob bombs at one another, it's going to get a lot worse before it gets any better. Now you're probably expecting me to get all upset about the price of gasoline. The producers of this TV show always want me getting mad at something. But the fact is, our gasoline is cheap, way too cheap. In countries in Europe and Japan, they pay 2 to 3 times as much for gasoline as we do, and as a result they've developed automobiles that are much more fuel efficient than ours. There's nothing like the doubling in the price of gasoline to create a stampede towards more fuel efficient automobiles. By one estimate, in the United States, if they put just a 25-cent tax on each gallon of gasoline, they'd erase their federal deficit in just 5 years. Now, it's hard for me to believe that I'm telling the governments to take more money from us, but the fact is they're going to take it whether we like it or not. And if some of it comes from gasoline, maybe we can convince them that it should go towards better roads and improved public transportation. So Canadians, wake up and smell the gas fumes. We've been living in a fairyland for too long. It's about time we bit the fuzzy end of the lollipop and started paying realistic prices for non-renewable resources like petroleum. This is Jim Kenzie in Kenzie's Corner.
How about a ride, sir? You know, there is one problem driving a car like the NSX. You gotta take everybody in town for a drive. Well, that's it for now. We'll see you next week for more stories and more cars on Motoring 91.
Hey, will you take me for a ride?
Girls first. I'll be back, guys. Seatbelt on.
Motoring 91 has been brought to you by Quaker State. The big Q stands for quality. Always has, always will.
I got it. Well, you know what happened? Somebody must have pushed the lock down. And I pushed the lock up. As soon as I did that, it went off. Okay, one more. Boy, are we having fun now.